Hello and welcome to Author Academia's spoiler section for The Cruel Prince. So to start off with, I would like to talk about Prince Dane and Mithridatism. I think that's how you pronounce that word. And one of the most excellent parts of The Cruel Prince, I think, is this use of elements that are kind of foreshadowed throughout the story. And there's a common expression, I think, I don't remember the quote exactly, but it goes something along the lines of, if there's a dagger on the wall in Act 1, it should be used by like the end of Act 2 or the start of Act 3 or something. And I think that applies to the Cruel Prince here, especially with this Mithridatism, because Dane asks Jude to kind of ready herself against poison, and you can see kind of Jude like preparing herself throughout the book, but it's kind of subtle. If you're not really paying attention, you're not sure how it will kind of all tie together. And then in the very end, Jude uses her resistance against poison to trick, I guess, kind of her fairy father, and is able to defeat him. And I think that is really awesome. And it kind of just shows you how much planning went into The Cruel Prince to have all these plot twists and all these elements kind of just come together in such a great kind of way. And also, one of my favorite scenes in this entire book was probably when that one fairy dude tried to sneak into Jude's bedroom to kill her or something. And she ended up killing him right after Prince Dane had told her not to cause trouble. And it was kind of such an intense moment. And Jude just kind of, this was kind of like the end of her innocence and like the start of her character development into kind of this cold, manipulative, conniving person. And she kind of takes his body and just hides it under her bed and goes to sleep with it, I think, and like deals with it the next day. And it was pretty intense for me to read that, and I think that was probably one of the best parts of the book, hands down. Also, Prince Dane's own plot twist, having him get killed in such a bloody kind of, what was it in Game of Thrones, the Red Wedding? Is that what they called it? Kind of the Red Wedding fashion, where you have these established characters that just are killed, just killed off. And it's surprising, and I think it wasn't cheapened here. I think it was well done. I think the character deaths had meaning and had purpose and weren't just deaths to entice the reader to keep reading and see who dies. It was actually for the purpose of moving the plot forward, and it was meaningful. I especially liked the kind of the slave part of it, where Jude sneaks into this house and kind of tries to rescue the slave girl, and the slave girl kind of comes to like consciousness, and she realizes that this very world exists and this magic exists, and Jude's trying to save her and take her away. And you think everything's all right, and then this slave girl she can't fathom this fairy world. And as they fly over the ocean, she jumps off and kills herself. And that kind of rocked me. And I definitely think it showed that the world of Inside the Cruel Prince is very unforgiving and very dark. And it was a moment of the story that I think kind of helped show me as a reader that Jude wasn't perfect. And even though this rescue mission pretty much went off without a hitch, Jude ultimately failed saving this girl. And my safety as a reader was shattered. I'm like, oh my god, well, if Jude couldn't save the slave girl, then maybe she won't be able to save other people, and maybe other of her plans will fail. And yeah, I think it was really well done. One of the parts that really actually angered me when I read it, and it kind of broke my immersion, and I understand now, looking back at it, that it was done on purpose. I'll just explain it to you. So, Jude comes into service for Prince Dane. I think that's his title, and basically she sacrifices her her freedom to be bound to service to Dane, so she has to follow his commands and his whims. But in return, she's given the ability to resist fairy charm. And the big problem I had with this initially reading it is because as soon as Jude gets this fairy charm, she goes over to the bullies who had been bothering her before, and she tries to stand up to them again, and they give her something that ends up charming her. Like, she eats something and it charms her right after she had just suddenly made this sacrifice to not be charmed. And it really bothered me reading that. It kind of took me out of the story because I'm like, because the story itself kind of sets this rule. It's like, okay, so Jude's made this sacrifice, now she has resistance to charms, and then immediately after, it's like she just gets charmed from eating this thing. And yeah, I when I read that, I'm like, well, that's stupid. Like, the story just established that Jude can't be charmed, and now she's charmed. So that's it. Made me a little bit angry. I realized that there's a reason why, in story wise, that Jude was charmed by eating this thing. I understand that. I just think right after something like that, having an exception to the rule instead of like allowing us as readers to see Jude's resistance come to fruition, it could have been timed a little bit better. And but that's really the only gripe I have with it. I mean, it doesn't really break the story. It just kind of made me a little bit angry reading it because I didn't like fully understand the reason why. And yeah, it's a really small gripe. I think it could have just been maybe written somewhere else in the story instead of like right after her sacrifice with Prince Dane. And yeah, that's just about all I have to say here. Very good. And I'm sure if you guys are listening to this, you've read it as well, and I'm sure you know just how good Cruel Prince is, especially the writing. So I think that's everything I had to talk about today. Thank you guys for watching this video, and if you watched the review, thank you for watching that too. I'll see you guys next week probably. Have a great day.